and my Boba Fett, right? And then I put hit Boba Fett's gun, so they're fighting each other. Because I
Right.
thought it was so appropriate, because it's like 100 days till Star Wars,
Uh-huh.
and I'm really excited about it. I
Mhm.
hope it's not a total fuckfest, like clusterfuck, really
I'm
bad.
hopeful. I'm very
I'm
hopeful
actually
with what I've
hopeful
seen.
for it too, because I've seen previews. Previews look good.
Mhm.
Mm.
Should be exciting, hopefully. So Boba Fett versus Spock
Mhm.
is going on in the background here. So
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I was gonna post that on Google Plus later. I totally forgot, but they're actually having a war back here. There's Han Solo and he's teaming up with like Genghis Khan and like
Mm.
I don't know. Anyway, that's totally unrelated. So welcome to our what are we? We're like really
I
far.
I just did a quick count before we started, and I got 23, but that seems low.
I
I
know.
may have overlooked a few.
I was thinking like we've done like a lot of anime,
Mhm.
so we've got to be more than like 20 something.
I,
I don't know. I should totally do a proper
yeah,
count to figure out like where we're at and everything.
I
But
just did it real quick between the test and then the official call, so I may
yeah,
have missed a few.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It really doesn't matter. I just know that we're in Welcome to NHK,
Yeah.
and that's the anime that we're doing, and we're finishing up the anime today. So
Episodes 22 through 24.
yes. So Leandra, have you been able to watch any of Welcome to NHK at all?
I got maybe 2 episodes under my belt this entire time, so I'm primarily going to be an observer and feeding off of your critique.
Cool. I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, because last call Jeremy was on, and Jeremy was kind of doing that, like
Mhm.
feeding off what was going on, and he
Yeah.
brought some really interesting points
Oh, yeah.
to the call too. So so we'll go ahead and get started with episode 22.
And this
Just
picks up right after 21 with Sato basically in the fetal position on the street corner after him and Misaki had gotten separated on the way to the shrine. And Hitomi finds him.
yeah. So Leandre, what's happened up to this point is Sato has pretty much almost graduated, if you will, from this project that Misaki's created for him to cure his Hikikomo.
Okay.
And she's decided that she's going to do a final exam. And the final exam is pretty much can he withstand a very high volume social situation, which is New Year's Shrine Festival. And there are tons and tons of people walking around. Sato actually ends up losing Misaki in the craziness of the crowd, and of course his delusional state comes back and his paranoia comes back, and hence
Right.
He's in this fetal position, just completely losing his mind in the street, and he runs into
Hitomi.
none other than Hitomi, which is his kind
Yes.
of like, I want to say she's his crutch for
Yeah.
his like psychosis almost. Like every time he gets psychotic and every time he starts losing his mind and getting like really like social anxiety, severe social anxiety, she comes up and
Okay.
he's always thinking of her saying like, oh, you know, it's a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy theory. And he goes really far with this episode in his delusion of Hitomi.
Oh, yeah, which wasn't sure was if it was delusion at points.
Right. Because the way that, and again, like, this series has really done a great job of blending the delusional, virtual, magical world of Sato and the real world, which he just like pretty much subsists in. And
Right.
so as the viewer, you kind of get lost at points as to like what's real and what's fake, and like who's the real character and who's not, you know. So we get that right in the beginning of this
Oh, yeah.
episode. We get boob action.
Basically, Hitomi finds him, in the fetal position on the street, and they end up going back to, well, what we guess is her apartment or something. Next thing we know, they're sitting on a bed, and she walks out in a robe. And she says she's had a thing for him for a long time, which should have been a red flag that it was a delusion.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she's there naked, and
Well,
she's like,
then she removes the robe, and we finally get Hitomi fan service. So yay for that.
yeah, and she has great boobs. I gotta say, like,
Yeah.
she does.
This seems to have a very strong Gantz feel to it.
Gantz?
Judging by what, yeah, Gantz is
Mhm.
much along the same lines when it comes to the diversity between what's real and what's not real. But each of the characters who are quote unquote not real, not fully understanding the level of realism that
Right.
they're dealing with within their world. So yeah,
I think I have to
and
check
also
that out.
boobs. Yeah.
Have you seen Gantz?
No, I haven't. I think I have to check it out though.
Oh yes,
Sounds very interesting.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, and the
Gantz is
manga is excellent.
I think the manga is better than the actual anime because
Definitely.
Gonzo. I think Gonzo was the one who produced it. Sorry, I had to connect myself. But I think Gonzo produced it, and they fucked that anime up royally at the end. Like, as a viewer, I hate the kind of anime where you have to kind of read the manga to find the ending. And it's one of those, and it's really frustrating because you're like, okay, why do I have to go through that? You know?
Exactly. And you're right. Gantz, it seemed as though they were in a rush. They were very, very heavy-handed with the ending scene and trying to wrap everything up instead of giving you more of that meaty background that you really needed to fully understand what they were dealing with.
What is the freaking ball? Like, the whole time, I'm like, you know, so, sorry, John, totally.
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't give a shit. That anime pissed me off so much because it's so good and it's so intense. Like, you almost kind of feel like, do I hate the main character? Do I like him? You know, you're in this in between with him because he doesn't really know himself how to feel. Like, he's had to kill off his best friend. He's had to kill off, like, really nice people. You know, like, all this shit that this guy has to go through, and you feel terrible for him. And at the end of it all, like, it's just this really muddied, terrible conclusion that you're like, oh, fuck you. Like, really? You made me watch 24 episodes, or, like, what was it, like, 26 episodes or something to get this really shitty ending where we're not sure if this is reality or not, and all of a sudden the fucking ball disappears, and then there's just, like, them on the subway where they may or may not have died.
May or may not, right. And then you don't know if, well, they make it pretty abundantly clear that, okay, you are basically a carbon copy, right? And then your doppelganger, in their minds, it's a doppelganger. There's someone in the real world that's actually living your life when you're not there. And then when you get called away, that person's life goes on oblivious to what you're going through. And if you die, well, you die. It really doesn't matter. You're gone. This other person is going to live on. So you have that mind screw that's going through you. And then also you have to try to determine why you're doing what you're doing. The manga actually goes in and defines what they're doing. And then the universe, it gets pretty expensive. Like, it's not just one team.
Sounds right up my alley. I love a good mindfuck, but I think I will have to go with the manga instead of the anime, though.
Is it like Bokurano in some ways?
I'm sorry, say again?
I said, is it like Bokurano in some ways? Because Bokurano, I really, really loved Bokurano. I thought, I don't know if the manga goes deeper into the universe.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so they are parallel, right? So the manga goes deeper into the Gantz universe. You figure out why that ball exists, and then after you figure out why the ball exists, and you figure out why all the teams are put together, then you figure out who the ball really works for, and then it really gets screwy from there. And you know, it makes it a really wonderful manga to engage in, based on the fact that it has so many layers. The anime, it only scratches the surface, and it does so lightly. It prematurely kills off a character that actually makes it much farther than, you know, so.
Yeah, I really don't like that. Same thing with, like, to draw another comparison, Bokurano, and then we'll jump back to Welcome to the NHK. Bokurano, I really loved the anime of Bokurano until the end. The end just, I hate an anime that really gets you involved. And you're only seeing these characters like once, in this episode. Maybe they might have like a 1.5 or 2 episode arc to get their story out, and that's fine. Like Cowboy Bebop. We've got that. You've got that concept of monster of the day, thing, or case of the day. But for me, Bokurano didn't explain like who these greater gods were that were kind of manipulating the human universes, and there's all these multi-dimensions that are going on, and they're all dealing with the same quote-unquote game to save the world, but they're kind of what is it? What's the word I'm thinking of? Like when they're predicting their own future, because they're perpetuating their future. Actually, that's what
okay. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right, exactly. So, but it doesn't go further into explaining who runs that, who's feeding. Like, are the humans being fed off of, and all this stuff. So that's one thing that I was like, I might have to go into the manga to find out more about this, because I was really frustrated at the ending, because like they kind of just save their world, but they don't explain anything else, and I don't like that. So
I had to chuckle at your rant about the end of Gantz, though, because it reminded me of my rant about the end of Clannad.
Oh yes, a couple of calls ago, Leandre, John went on a very extensive.
I despise Clannad simply because of the twist at the end. Have you seen Clannad, Leandre?
No, but actually, hearing this title and your rant that went along with it, I should try it out.
It's based on a visual novel. It's kind of cheesy, but the second half it gets really interesting. They basically put the main character through the ringer emotionally, and then in the next to the last episode, because the last episode is actually an alternate history where, because it's a visual novel, they give you another option. But the end of his story, they basically destroy his life and then magically rewind history to when he was happy, and everything plays out nicely.
Oh.
Which
Very
I hate, because
odd.
I love pathos.
Yeah.
Yes, we've established that a few calls ago too. So
anyway, back to NHK.
Yeah. So that actually is a great segue back to NHK. So
we have the fantasy of Hitomi and Sato in the hotel room. She says she's always had a thing for him. She gets topless. They're about to kiss, and then we find out it's actually a fantasy. And then we have a rare trope, because this show doesn't play tropes often. But Sato gets a nosebleed right after the fantasy, which I loved.
My favorite part, and this is how you realize that it's Sato's delusional world getting the best of him, is that his little creatures that he's created as his NHK kind of mascot.
The little blue guys, they cover her. They censor her.
Hanging off her boot.
Yeah, they basically censor her when it's revealed that it's a fantasy.
Right. It's genius. Like, I loved it. I was like, that's great. And then Sato gets a nosebleed, and Hitomi's like, oh, that's a really bad nosebleed. Like, you must have been freaking out because of all the people. And I was like, no, he's just imagining you like starting it, And he just had this total fantasy about what your boobs look like. So, and I felt so bad for Misaki. The entire episode.
Well, she's the episode running around searching for Sato, which is what we cut to at this point. The beginning of that.
And she just keeps running around trying to go everywhere looking for Sato, and she's not finding him anywhere. And she's really responsible because she brought him to this New Year's shrine. And when she brought him to the New Year's shrine, she ended up losing him. And now he's wandering around in the crowd. Who knows what could have happened to him? And in her mind, she's thinking, he's tried to kill himself before. This guy is very, very fragile, very sensitive. Anything could happen to him. I really am responsible for what he does. And so when come back to Sato is talking to
they end up in a restaurant or a coffee shop or something.
Right. And Hitomi is telling him how, she was there. She's like really surprised to see him because he's a hikikomori, and hikikomoris would never be at the Year Shrine. But at the same time, she's kind of happy to see him because she was all alone herself because
Jogasaki got
Jogasaki
called to work.
had to go to work. And so she's going on about, like, Hitomi hasn't resolved her, like, issues.
Right.
She hasn't resolved her kind of depressive, dark issues that caused her to go into a suicide club in the first place.
Right.
She still holds that, very, I would say, complacent.
Because they're not necessarily issues you can resolve. My vibe on Hitomi has always been she has clinical depression.
Right. And the
Straight
other
up clinical depression.
Well, this is more going towards the conclusion of the show, but that's kind of what we did learn in the show, is that you're not going to cure depression, you're not going to cure social anxiety, you're not going to cure something as a long-term, that's it, I'm done. Like, this is never going to happen to me again. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a continuous kind of, like, I would say almost monster that you have to work with, And Hitomi going through a suicide club did not all of a sudden make her go, oh, wonderful, I'm cured now. I'm not going to try and kill myself again. So
back to 22. So she's sitting with Sato in the restaurant, and she's basically is explaining how she and Jogasaki are now engaged and very close to getting married, and she's beginning to have second thoughts.
Yeah, she's getting cold feet. And that's, she thinks that she's some sort of new person to like experience it. Which I think is hilarious. Like, I think Hitomi's character cracks me up the most. Because Hitomi is such a self-serving bitch. She's a self-serving bitch. Like, seriously. She is one of those people that just has nothing positive to add to a story or a situation.
She is a straight up parasite. Even more so than, Misaki ends up being kind of a parasite, but she means well.
Yeah, Misaki's for sure damaged, and she's trying to learn how to deal with her own.
Misaki has very good intentions.
And yes.
Hitomi is just there to take.
Yeah, Hitomi is just a selfish cunt. I'm sorry, I have to say it. I can't. Her character makes me angry. Like, she literally every time Sato has like started to make some sort of improvement emotionally or started to do something more with himself and think better, about life and in general about who he is, she either enters his brain and like tells him it's a conspiracy and everything's a lie, or she physically shows up and ruins the shit. Like, she really does, So, Sato probably could have dealt with his social anxiety. He might have been able to be like, okay, I'm in this situation. I got to learn to calm down, and then Misaki could have found him, and then it could have been a happily ever after, right? Instead, Hitomi sees him, and she starts to feed him into the conspiracy theory and into, also she takes him down this very dark path. Like, she's starting to say, well, maybe we should, she's with Sato, and she's like, I always find you. I always find you at like the worst time.
I was just going to say, she does have a knack for finding him when he's at his worst.
And when she's at her worst. Yeah. Like, she wants to do bad, And she's getting herself really drunk around him. So she loses her inhibitions around him. And that's kind of one thing that I thought of as Hitomi. Hitomi is just like this bad influence. Like,
very similar to what happened right before the offline meeting.
Yes. And I was sitting there going like, oh no, Sato, don't have an affair with her.
Yeah, she just to explain, she brings up the possibility of having an affair.
Yeah, because she's saying that, maybe they're supposed to be together, because she's always finding him and he's always there for her. And I actually thought of Hitomi on like the crazy hot scale. I don't know if you've heard this.
I get the idea.
But Hitomi's like, you have to be equally crazy to be equally hot, So like, if she's super crazy, she has to be super hot. And now that we've seen like Hitomi naked, I'm like, all right, you know what, Sato, I get it. I get why you're all about this girl, because at least in your mind, that's what she looks like. All right, you know. But still, you know, I was like, okay, Sato, you've made all this progress. Don't fuck it up. Don't do it.
And
don't destroy your life going that way.
And speaking of all in your mind, I totally fell for the affair fantasy.
Yeah?
I totally bought it. I thought it would actually happen.
Yeah, well, the way they shot it, it seemed like it did. You know? The way that all of a sudden kind of cut to them being naked together and, you know, being in, and it showed like the hotels and everything. Like,
they showed them checking into a hotel and in bed together, and cut back to them back in the restaurant.
No, in the street.
Oh, it was right. It was in the street after the restaurant. You know, finishing the conversation.
Yeah, I almost thought that they did it too, but then I realized, like, you know, she's talking to him and he's spacing out again.
Yeah.
And he asked her, like,
well, that's when Misaki sees them together and just kind of freezes.
Yes. And then Hitomi's like, you know, like, well, it's another conspiracy, right? Sato, you know, it's a conspiracy. That's what they want us to do. Yeah. So, you know, and that was a positive thing, because otherwise, who knows? Like, that could have gone a total different way.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And
I was relieved to find that it didn't actually happen.
Yeah, me too. Because I don't, you know, I really don't think that would have been any more positive for him or for her.
No.
Particularly, I think Sato in particular. Yeah. Because I think Hitomi's enough of a man-eater, I want to say, almost, and like a psychotic. She's very kind of psycho to me. Like, that she could have been able to deal with that, you know. She would have been able to be like, all right, this happened, done, let's move on, you know. But what destroyed Sato. And
Sato's relationship with Hitomi is basically the definition of be careful what you wish for.
Bitches be crazy. That's pretty much what it is. Let's be honest. The next 3 episodes are crazy. All right, let's just call. This is what this chunk of Welcome to NHK is. All right. I was watching a comedian, Yale Hughley. He's really funny. He's got a great stand-up on Netflix right now, and he's talking about how women are crazy. Speaking of, it's really funny.
Except I'm sympathetic about the other one, not for Hitomi.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely sympathetic more towards Misaki. Yeah. Definitely. But still, bitches be crazy. So.
And then Hitomi reveals to him that she's pregnant, which is scary as hell.
You know, I didn't see that one coming. The first time I watched this, I was like, whoa, this bitch is talking about having an affair and she's pregnant. She's like, she should go literally on the subway, check herself into a fucking mental hospital and get her brain checked, because that's the kind of shit that, like, imagine your baby coming out of your mama and then, like, you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I was like totally doing some other guy, you know, when, you know, I just found out that I was having you. Like, I don't know, like, I just think that she's insane. She's absolutely insane. And, you know,
and not exactly in the same way, but kind of shades of what we soon find out about Misaki's mother. Not the same expression of the mental illness, but she was mentally ill.
Well, I think Misaki's mother had way more serious problems.
More serious, but there was certainly depression there and other issues. And you know, we saw what it did to Misaki, and now Hitomi is about to have a kid, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of Sato in this moment. So I was like, good job, Sato. I'm glad you didn't become a homewrecker in that situation, because that would have been some serious shit. And Sato is not man enough to deal with his own shit. Could you imagine him getting into that shit? No way. So, anyway, good job, Sato. So Sato decides that he's gonna walk Hitomi to the subway station, and Misaki sees him with her. and she thinks like, oh, they just did something, you know, because the way that they're walking, and she saw them coming out from like the hotel district. She's like, something's going on here.
Well, Hitomi insists that they walk arm in arm, and of course, Sato's not going to complain.
Of course, because Sato sees her as his dream woman. So, and now, and that's when Hitomi says about her being pregnant. And then she says, you know, 10 years from now, when our lives have stabilized, we should have a reunion. And I was like, I mean, I guess in some ways that's kind of true, but I don't think that's necessarily the case, you know? Like, just because 10 years passed, you really stabilize yourself. I think it's more of a, you grow emotionally.
I see Yamazaki possibly stabilizing. I think the direction he takes will be good for him.
Yeah.
I think Masaki and Sato will stabilize.
I don't think Hitomi will.
No, she will just get worse.
I think
unless she gets professional help very soon, she will just get worse.
She's got some serious, deep-seated darkness to her.
And stress exacerbates mental illness, always.
And the other thing that
having a kid is extremely stressful.
Well, yeah, for sure. I'm not speaking from experience here, but yeah, you know, all my other friends have had them, and I'm like, yeah. So, but
I have 9 nieces and nephews. I again don't have my own, but I've had enough experience, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the other thing is that why I think that Hitomi is going to stay kind of in this pretty crazy situation is that she can't open up to her partner. Like, she can't be honest with Jogasaki. Like, she's like, I can't be this drunk around him.
Well, that's what
really
Sato is for.
Be around him. So I think that's kind of like a red flag, you know? Even later on in the next episodes when she writes to Sato, I don't think that she's writing from a place of genuine happiness.
She's with Jogasaki because on paper he's the right choice.
And I think because it's an expectation.
Yes.
And for her, she'd rather have something like secure and stable, you know, because that's the whole reason why she went into her fucking crazy suicide club bullshit. Is because she wanted Jogasaki to marry her, and then she's gonna go and want to have an affair with Sato. Like, the bitch is crazy.
She is severely depressed.
So yeah. Anyway, so she needs some help, and I'm glad Sato didn't do that. So
walking to the train station, next we have Misaki catches up with Sato after, you know, she's left. And
Misaki is in the very, like, so when you see the character that's like brooding and upset, he's got that exact look where, and I apparently, like, I don't know, you probably do that too. I think everybody does, but like where you have that look where you're just like very frustrated and, you know, like, and internalizing everything, but you're not going to show how you feel emotionally, you know?
I have a very bad case of RBF.
RBF?
Resting bitch face.
Oh!
Like, to the point where back in college, a friend's girlfriend wasn't sure if I liked her or not. And the way he put it was, if he looks at you when you talk to him, he likes you.
That's funny. It took me a second. Resting bitch face. Oh yeah, that makes sense. For me, Misaki's face in this is just like disappointment, frustration, confusion. You know, like she's completely heartbroken.
I completely related to and sympathized with Misaki in this last run.
Absolutely. I just wrote, poor Misaki, because like honestly, that's so harsh, you know. And then Sato turned around and starts fucking lying to her about where he's been. Like, dude, come on, you know, the chick has been helping you the whole time. Couldn't you be honest with her? You know, she freaking saved you from killing yourself. Couldn't you just be honest with her for just like 1 minute and just tell her, hey, yeah, I ran into fucking crazy Hitomi who wanted me to have an affair with her, but I said, no, I don't think it's a good idea, you know? And I'm here. He could have made everything better for her. But instead, what he's done now is he's set Misaki on her own emotional roller coaster now.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't communicate either.
Mm-hmm.
She's just as bad, no, if not worse, than Sato with communicating.
Well, but I understand it in her case because she doesn't want to get confirmation.
She also doesn't want
terrified.
She doesn't want to be a burden.
Yeah, that too.
Sato. Like, that's her whole thing. And even going on to the next episode and the final episode, like, she's constantly thinking of herself as a burden to Sato, a burden to society. So she needs to fulfill some sort of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if, you know, Sato were to see her as such, then that would really destroy her.
Mm-hmm. And I loved her line in that scene in the train station, though. Even if there was a god, he'd probably be too evil to help us out anyway.
Yeah. And this is really where we see Misaki's and like where her motivations are drawn from. Yeah. Like, all up until now, we've thought that Misaki has some sort of really positive, really like happy kind of motivation. Like, it seemed that she's had some sort of desire to help Sato coming from a very genuinely good kind of place. But she's really coming from a very, very dark place.
Oh,
and I think that for me personally, this episode is the episode where I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I said I thought I'd gotten I thought I got her before, but this really explains it. And she needs someone worse off than her so that she can be useful.
Right.
She doesn't think she has any worth, any value. She needs a purpose. And if she can find someone who is worse than her, then somebody who might need her.
Yeah. For me, Misaki, I up until now, I thought she was like a cute girl that, you know, saw this guy and, you know, thought that maybe she could help him and, you know, was really motivated to help him. And it's kind of like her first love type of thing. That's kind of where I thought her motivations were in the beginning.
That's what I thought up until when she reveals that at the offline meeting what's her, you know, the first layer of her motivations. Up until that scene where she's yelling through the megaphone, that's exactly what I thought about her.
Yeah, and I think
and then it just gets deeper.
Little by little, we've seen her kind of change in the like second half of the show. There's been a definitive change in her emotional state and what's driving her. Yeah. And you see her become even more desperate and even more attached to Sato.
Yeah.
So, and that's her thing. So we actually get back to
next day at Sato's apartment. And Yamazaki calls drunk off his ass. With a great line. Out here in the boonies, everybody gets along with everyone else as long as we're drinking.
Isn't that the truth?
Sounds like just about every family gathering.
Oh, dude. Let me tell you, that is so true. So true.
And this wasn't... No, it's in the last one he reveals that his prediction is coming true. That's in the last episode, right? Yeah. This is just, he's talking about this in this one. He just talks about how, you know, basically everybody drinks all the time just to keep everything nice and mellow and, you know.
Yeah.
So nobody kills each other.
Exactly. And Yamazaki tells Sato, hey, so there's apparently a surplus of dairy products. So I'm going to be sending you all this cheese and milk, like, till you can't see straight. You're dairy. And he's like, woohoo, I can survive on milk and cheese forever, yay! And then poor Misaki is coming up the stairs with his lunch, you know, and she's reassuring herself the whole time, like, he needs me, he needs me, he needs me, I have to be here. And it's kind of like she wants to gloss over the New Year's Shrine event because she's like, you know what, that's not important, he still needs me, I need to be here. And so she doesn't want to talk about whatever issues or whatever insecurities she might have, instead of kind of, and clearly that also shows that she doesn't have the maturity in order to be in a relationship, you know, because she can't talk about what's bothering her. She just wants to gloss over it and be like, everything's going to be okay, he needs me, He's useless. I'm not as useless as he is. Like I have a purpose. You know, I have to feed him. He has nobody else. You know, Yamazaki's gone. You know, so I'm it.
And I really, you're right that she lacks. It's a lack of maturity. Then she should be talking. But I totally get it, because when you make that assumption, on one level, you're telling yourself, well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe I'm wrong. And the last thing you want is confirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want to hold on to that hope that maybe you're wrong.
Well, and also, going into the next episode mostly, but we see that Misaki really has no background foundation as far as emotional development. You know, from what she's been brought up and what she's gone through, it makes complete sense.
Well, it doesn't, but we'll get to that. I have some issues with her backstory.
Cool.
Just wrapping up 22 real fast. We have, you know, she brings Miss Sato his lunch, and he tells her, you know, but what Yamazaki had offered him the milk and cheese. And let's just take a moment to imagine someone who literally lives on milk and cheese.
That would have been awesome to see, like a Sato living on milk and cheese.
But of course, you know, Sato says, you know, I'm taken care of, I'm good, and this just kills Misaki.
It literally, like, her face just like shatters. You know, she's like all like kind of trying to be happy, trying to motivate herself and feel good about the situation, and then she sees that and she's just like. Total breakdown, and she runs away from the apartment.
Another recurring theme.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have the next counseling session, and this is really where Misaki breaks. Yes. She has this chart, which I loved. It's a graph, it's pie graph about life and how it's like 90% pain. And then she says she wants to overthrow God.
Well, a lot of this is motivated too because she has this cat that she's been feeding throughout the cat.
Oh, right, the cat. I forgot about the cat.
The cat is now dead.
Yeah.
And so
Sato walks up to her at the counseling session.
Death. This session, she's going to talk about the end of life and death. And she's motivated by the fact that the cat's died.
When Sato arrives at the counseling session, the cat's there, dead in front of her.
Yes.
So she just found it.
Yes, and then she's burying the cat, and she decides that she's saying, you know, that God created an unfair and horrible world, and, you know, God has to be evil because he created so much suffering. And why would God create a world and allow you to be a hikikomori in such a horrible place, you know? And she gets very, very, very cynical and very, very dark. And she's continuing to kind of feed. And the darker she gets and the more cynical she gets, the worse Sato gets.
Although I have to
off of that.
I'll have to admit, the darker she got, the more I kind of fell in love with her.
Well, you're what's her name again from Fooly Cooly?
Oh yeah, that's a very good point. Why am I blanking on it? Yeah. Mamimi. You're right. She does get very close to Mamimi. You're right.
Yeah. So, you know, I kind of actually thought that.
I didn't catch that. You're right. You're right.
Very, very similar. Like, she has a very similar personality, and at least now, like she's shifting to a very, very dark place. You know? And she's actually becoming more apathetic. I would even say towards not even necessarily towards Sato's case, but more towards like the suffering of the world.
Kind of life in general.
And life.
Yeah. And then cut to her in her bedroom that night, working out another contract. And she has this monologue about how Sato is going to be her captive. Yeah. Which was very sinister. And that's where it ends. That's all. We don't get the explanation of that till the ending, which was actually kind of adorable when they got to the explanation. But
yeah.
Now, 23 was interesting.
23 is, I think, the episode that really explains everything about what is a hikikomori.
Yeah.
How does hikikomori survive and overcome the hikikomori syndrome? I think this is the episode, and the reason why, I don't know if you remember last call, but I had said that the situation in Ichi is
I definitely thought about that, and that's one of my issues. This is, in my opinion, the weakest episode of the series. I won't say worst, because I still like it, but it's the only one that I have any real issues with. And a big part of that is that they mirror those two situations.
Well,
let's just jump right into that.
Yeah,
instead of going
I
in
like
order.
that. That's interesting. I want to see why you feel
basically Sato ends up in a situation very similar to Yuichi's. He has a falling out with Masaki. Yamazaki's gone. And Yamazaki calls him and tells him something happened and he can't send him all of the milk and cheese now. And is that when he explains that he's getting married to? Or is that in the last episode?
That is in the last episode.
That's in the last episode.
You're jumping ahead a little bit. In the beginning of that, they're in their counseling session. And
I'm just jumping ahead to my issue, but if you want to go in order, we'll do that.
Yeah. Just because it's chronology.
Okay, yeah, we'll keep it in order. And Masaki was kind of mumbling before Sato got there, and I was trying to figure out what she was talking about. And then he gets there, and they start the counseling session, and I got it. It was famous last words. She gives him a test on literally famous last words. Celebrities' dying words.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a huge
this is the big flashing red flag. Yes,
this should be the whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Whoa. This person needs to slow her roll, really, clearly.
And I actually kind of accidentally spoiled this for myself when I saw that Kiss Anime was down, and I went looking for all of the episodes on YouTube. I was going through each of them just to make sure they were subtitled, and I got to this one, and I happened to skip ahead to. A part. I think it was in this one or the next one that reveals the backstory about her mother, or hints at it. So I was kind of ready for all of that. So when she gave him that test about the famous last words, not only was it a giant flag, I knew definitely it was coming.
Well, yeah, and I think the biggest flag of all is when Misaki is explaining about that particular one athlete that went home and had some sort of sweet yams or something, and he wanted to go to his hometown before he ended up committing suicide. And so she kind of alludes to the fact that, that's something that she would probably do, and kind of be like, well, that kind of makes sense that you'd want to go see your hometown before you end up leaving your existence. So, and Sato doesn't really put that into any sort of, it doesn't register to him as to anything. He's just sitting here he's kind of just still thinking that it's about his hikikomori syndrome. And so
he was really confused about how famous last words fit into his counseling.
Yeah, I think he should have been a little more like, hey, Misaki, what is the point of this? I'm not trying to commit suicide here, so I wasn't trying to commit suicide back then either. Well, no, actually he was. At that point he was just like, fuck it, I'm ready to jump off the cliff. But
it was one of the others who decided not to do it and stopped the whole thing.
Right. And at this point he's kind of like, I'm not there anymore, so maybe he could have tried to maybe talk a little more to Misaki and get a little more out of her.
But he's not nearly self-aware enough to even pick up on the giant hints.
Yeah, he's not emotionally developed enough to understand his own issues, let alone to recognize the issues of others.
Right.
So that makes sense. And she herself is not really emotionally developed enough either to recognize the issues of others, because she would have never realize that, you know, Sato could even be to the point that he would want to kill himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, so going forward,
well, then we get her backstory. He asks, you know, where she's from.
yes.
And she kind of points, and for a second I thought she had completely, because they showed a shot of the sky, the night sky, and when she starts talking and she points, and I thought she'd completely lost it and was going to claim to be, you know, from, you know, some other planet or something. But she says she's from this, you know, basically a small village on the Sea of Japan, and that there was this jetty near her house, and they didn't necessarily say it was who they didn't explain it who she saw jump, but she was out playing one day and she saw a woman either fall or jump off of this jetty.
Yes.
And like I said, I kind of spoiled it for myself earlier, so I knew who she had seen fall. And then she explains that she's going far away and that Sato had graduated.
Yeah, and she decided, actually she says that he's going to have one last test, and it was going to be tomorrow, and he has to meet her at the train station.
Yeah.
And this was really, really sad, because it was the saddest fucking date I've ever seen. Like, they literally had a date, you know? They went to the movies, they went to eat, they hung out, they walked around, like, they were like the saddest individuals in a group, and they weren't really talking, they weren't enjoying each other's company. Like, it was just this very odd social setting where, I mean, I don't even know if I could imagine that. Like, this is my final test, you know, I'm going to go on a date with you, but I'm not really going to, like, have any sort of real interaction with you, and it kind of is like forced, you know?
Did she pull out the second contract before or after the date?
After.
It was after the date, okay.
Yeah. So, what I think she wanted to do was kind of cement her status in his life.
Yeah.
Try to be like, this is what it could be like if we were together.
She was basically trying to sell him on what the second contract would be, which was basically a contract saying that I'm responsible for your happiness and you're responsible for mine.
It was like a trial period.
Yeah.
But she didn't tell him that it was a trial period. Like, it's like if you're going to join a site, right? And you don't know that you're in your trial period, and then you end up like going on the site, and it's kind of weird, and you're not really getting it, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, now you have to sign up, and you're like, wait, what? I didn't even really try anything. You know?
And so when she gives him this contract, I wanted to give her a hug. My heart just broke for her. I
think, I really think that she needs to learn outside of books.
Oh, I'm not saying she's healthy at all. She's severely damaged. Yeah. That's why I just wanted to give her a hug. Yeah. And he actually handled it a lot more sympathetically than I was ever expecting.
I didn't expect him to be as nice to her as he was. Yeah. Because, like, if I were Sato and I've been, like, kind of been running around doing this stuff that this girl tells me to do, I've been meeting for counseling every day, like, this girl's pretty much running my life, you know, but I didn't really ask for that. Like, it's a contract that I have to pay, like, 10 million yen if I, like, don't do it. I have to do it. Like, there's no choice to the matter. And then she comes around and gives me another contract and be like, now you have to do this for the rest of your fucking life with me? Like, wait, what? Like, do I have a choice in this? You know, I'm surprised he's as nice as he was. Because I would have not been nice. I would have been like, listen, you're fucking insane. Like, I've done everything for the last year that you asked me to do.
See, that's exactly how I expected Sato to react.
This is too far, you know? Like, if I'm cured from my hikikomori syndrome, sweet, I don't need to be here anymore. Deuces. You know? Like, that's what I thought he would have done. At least that's what I would have done, because she's been kind of all over, you know? She's running his show. But I think he also kind of appreciates the fact that she has been.
Well, it's that, and I also think because of his issues, he understands her now. He gets it. And he
isn't
basically
getting as
says,
much as he realizes, though.
well, he's not completely, but he
Yeah.
is as sympathetic as he is because he gets it, you know. And he's trying to explain to her, you know, we don't have, it doesn't have to be a contract, you know, you're better than that. You know, there's what's am I trying to say? You know, people will like you. You don't have to make people sign contracts. And
Yeah,
he's trying to explain this.
Trying to reassure her that, you know, she's okay,
Mhm.
you know. And he kind of condescendingly tells her, like, listen, you're a good person, you're good. He's like, do some yoga, you know. What is it? Do some yoga and stop coming up with stupid contracts. Like, come on, you know, like.
And she says that, you know, he's just as sad and lonely as she is, and he says, "I'm not lonely."
That hits a chord with him.
Yeah, he says,
And
"I'm not lonely," and runs away.
That's when he stops being nice to her,
Yeah.
and he says, "Leave me alone. I'm not lonely."
Mm-hmm.
You know, like nobody wants to be called out on their shit when, like, you don't call the pot the kettle black, or the pot called the kettle black doesn't call the pot black.
She's been calling him that the entire series,
right.
But she just hit the one that he wasn't ready to hear.
Exactly, and
he all but puts his finger in.
And he's been dealing with that because after Yamazaki left, he's been really feeling that loneliness and that, you know, I mean, what was it, last call when we were talking, where he's like, I'm the only person in the universe. Yeah. I'm the only one left, you know? And so he really feels this kind of creeping anxiety, you know? And he feels it, but he doesn't want to have somebody tell it to him. You know, you don't have to turn around and just say, hey, you're a lonely person, you know? So
and that's the point where he practically puts his fingers in his ear and runs away like a child.
Yes, I actually wrote he runs away like a child. So,
if you've ever seen Venture Brothers, the one, I don't remember which brother is which, but the blonde one, he kind of runs with his arms back. That's kind of how Sato ran.
Exactly. And so Sato comes home and he's like, I'm not lonely. I'm not a lonely person. And of course, Purin, which is the
imaginary magical girl,
anime girl,
yeah,
that Yamazaki gave to him, starts talking to him like, oh, what's wrong, Sato? No, but you are lonely. You miss Yamazaki. You miss everyone, and you're by yourself. And he's like, but no, I'm not. And then he starts saying, like, everything's a conspiracy, and then he starts thinking of Hitomi telling him, well, you need to admit it.
And then imaginary Yamazaki, Hitomi, and Megumi show up and can proceed to tell him how useless he is.
And they all want him to say that he's a failure. Admit that you're a failure and that you're useless.
And then he dreams of Masaki taking away his food. Like, she offers him food and then pulls back. And literally, like, is keeping it from him.
Well, that's because, I mean, Misaki hasn't come around for a while.
Yeah.
Established. Misaki is, like, not feeding him. Yamazaki did not give him the milk and cheese as promised. And now he gets the phone call that his pops is in the hospital and there's no money coming to him. Right. Now, this really pissed me off.
Didn't they cut him off a couple of episodes, though?
No, they cut it in half.
Oh, they didn't completely cut him off. Okay. Now he's completely
cut off. Now he has absolutely no money from his parents. Now, I was really upset about this because, you know, it doesn't seem like he hates his father.
Nope.
It doesn't seem like he has any real reason to not like him. You know, I know the father doesn't think that much of him, you know, as we've established in previous episodes, that he kind of was like, oh, stop giving him a call, or the mom calls him, you know, when the father's in the shower.
Right.
But, I mean, the father's been working his ass off, and now his father's in the hospital. Like, I was really pissed at him, but maybe that's because I have more, you know,
you relate to it.
Emotional maturity, I guess you will say. But I was really upset at him because he only gave a shit about the fact that he didn't have an allowance coming in, and not once did he think about, oh, my dad's in the hospital. Like, you're a dick, Sato. Like, you are a dick. Like,
I agree, of course.
I'm glad your parents cut you off, because that's some fucked up shit. Like,
it does fit the character, though.
It does fit his character, but it's totally fucked up.
Oh, absolutely.
His parents were spending his money. His mom was working like a dog. His dad was also working like a dog. That's why he's in the freaking hospital. But he doesn't give a shit enough to be like, oh, I should call my parents and at least see how my dad's doing. You know, but that totally fits with his character. And it solidifies the hikikomori syndrome, which is that nothing in the world matters but you.
Yeah.
And nothing in the world is more important than you are.
Mm-hmm.
As long, and this is the key, and this is why I love this episode, because as much as you were like, oh, I think it's kind of ridiculous, when you don't have the means to support yourself, you're going to have to figure it out. Like, first one.
I like that approach. And if this was the first time I'd seen, and this is one of my first big issue with this episode, and this is the only issue only episode I have big issues with. If this was the first time I'd seen that storyline, or that cure, effectively, I would have loved it. I loved it when they did it to Yuichi. I thought he found a job a little too quickly, and I think Sato finds a job a little too quickly. But beyond that, you know, it's a they have to get through it in one episode. Okay, they sped things up a little, but they got a little unrealistic. Fine.
Yeah.
We didn't need that. We didn't need to see Yuichi resolved. He could have just been left the cautionary tale, you know, having, you know, anxiety attack in his bedroom.
Yeah.
And if they had left that there and saved this fix for Sato,
right,
I'd still be whining about him finding a job too quickly.
It would have been more impactful, you think?
I still would have been, you know, nitpicking about him finding a job too quickly. But beyond that, I would have loved it because it works. You don't have the cruelty of Yuichi's sister leaving him alone. They had a falling out. It's more understandable how he was cut off. So you know, all of that logic works better, and it was a much more gradual improvement for Sato throughout the entire series. You know, it makes much more sense, and I just wish they hadn't telegraphed it with Yuichi.
I see. So if they had kind of saved the big reveal, if you will, for
if Sato had only been the only one to get this cure, I would have no complaints other than a little nitpick about how fast he found a job.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think as the viewer, you know, it kind of I can see where you're coming from with that. For me personally, I don't think it took anything away, for me at least,
to
the story. Because I kind of felt like, if anything, it added to the story because Yuichi was forced to kind of grow up in a lot of ways. And now Sato's being forced to grow up.
Yeah.
Because mommy and daddy are not going to give you the money anymore. You know?
Yeah.
Misaki is not going to come and spoon feed you, you know, tuna all day long anymore. Yamazaki isn't there that you can steal food from or that he can give you food, you know, willy-nilly. You know, you are now going to have to figure it out for yourself. And what Sato says is that, you know, living like a hikikomori is a luxury. Yeah. You know, as long as you have food, shelter, clothing, the necessities, and you can be a hikikomori and stay at home and watch TV and have everybody else take care of all the other shit that needs to be taken care of for you, that's fucking great. You're pretty much like a celebrity almost, right? I mean, almost. Because if it's a celebrity that never leaves her house and never does anything, you know, doesn't see the world,
we're also talking about two different things here.
Well, I'm saying that, you know, a home-bound individual.
Yeah, but it's a combination of a NEET and hikikomori are two different things.
Well, no, he's saying that the desire to be a hikikomori, it's not a real need.
No, it's a luxury, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you were conflating. You're talking about the celebrity. A NEET is basically living like a celebrity.
Right. Okay.
Hikikomori is the homebound, socially anxious version.
Well, I what I'm trying to say is that, you know, as far as somebody who has all of their needs taken care of, you know, if you have all of your needs taken care of and you can be a hikikomori, it's a luxury. It's a, you know, it's not a necessity, and it's not a right.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't just sit around and do nothing, you know, and reap the rewards of everyone else. You know, and that's the message to the show. You know, Welcome to the NHK is not about one person's, hikikomori syndrome. It's really about the idea of growing up and having to face your own music, essentially, whatever that is.
That's part of it. I think it's also, in a larger sense, it's sort of a study of neurosis and mental health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I could agree with that. And how to overcome situations. One thing that I really like is where is it that I think it's at the end. Yeah, it's at the end.
Just to finish off 23.
Yeah.
So Sato is coming back from the park, or no, it was his job. He finally, got the job because he'd been cut off completely.
Yeah, he had no food for days, so he was forced to go outside and
like
find a job.
Yeah. So he's coming home from work one day, and he sees Misaki being taken out of her house on a stretcher. And they don't show it, but presumably he goes over to find out what the problem was, finds out that her uncle was his landlord. He owns Mita House. And
right. Wait, you jumped ahead.
I did. Okay.
Yeah, Misaki is watching Sato the whole time. And
okay.
She Sato get a job.
And
she says, I guess he really doesn't need me anymore.
Right.
He's really cured.
Right.
He's really cured. So for her, that was the nail in her coffin, essentially. That was like, I'm useless.
Yeah.
I don't need to be
failed
anymore. So that's what so
she supposedly collapses in the shower and is taken out on a stretcher. Next thing we see Sato and her uncle driving to the hospital, find out that her uncle is Sato's landlord, and then we get the real backstory.
And it's the saddest backstory.
And it was a little excessive. I think it would have been better if she didn't have such a traumatic backstory. If she was just screwed up without all of that. I just would have found that a little more poignant. It seems like they were laying it on too thick. And also, that backstory would not tend to result in someone like Misaki. Just to explain, so the woman she saw jump was her mother. She actually did jump because her stepfather was abusive. So her mother committed suicide as a result, leaving Misaki alone with her abusive stepfather up until she was like 13 or 14, and then she came to live with her aunt and uncle in Tokyo. Someone who grew up with that would not be needy and clingy and reaching out. They would be closed off and angry like Sato. Because everything was taken away from them and they were beaten down. They wouldn't trust a soul.
I would agree with you on that, but I would think that emotionally they might be clingy, though. I think that
once they got attached,
if they find someone that they, and I think that goes to Misaki, because Misaki thought that she saw in Sato, and this is really why she chose Sato as a candidate, because she saw in Sato that she could find some sort of comfort in his routine.
Yeah.
She can find some sort of comfort in being some sort of addition to his life, Yeah. And she wanted to be needed. She wanted to be important to someone,
But she was still kind of reaching out and looking for that, which I think is unlikely coming from an abusive background.
I would disagree with you. I think as a woman,
okay.
And with that background, I would say, first of all, she doesn't have a father figure.
Okay.
So because you don't really have a father figure, and she doesn't have a mother figure either.
Right.
She's lost both parents. She doesn't have any sort of emotional foundation to have any sort of feeling of love until her uncle came into the picture. And I also think that it comes from the fact that she also, as a very young age, saw all of this hurt and suffering. And she thought to herself that maybe she could stop hurt and suffering.
Oh.
So that's where I got her story.
Okay.
And I think that kind of really broken, battered background, it really seals the damage.
Yeah. I still think they laid it on a bit too thick. It was the country song from hell.
The country song from hell. But I think,
But I do see it adding up a lot, but more like
especially
than it
as a
did,
as
yeah.
a as a female character, and you know
Yeah, I wasn't looking at it from that perspective.
what,
Yeah.
for me personally, I could identify with
Yeah.
Misaki's character.
Mhm.
Not going into too much detail,
Okay.
but you know,
Hey, for reasons, let's just leave it there.
yeah. Well, I was saying, like, you know, in your teenage years, like, you have a difficulty with finding people that you could really identify with.
Uh-huh.
And especially if you've had that kind of very tumultuous background,
Mhm.
it would be even more difficult for you to identify or to feel like you could find someone, you know, to feel anything for or that sort of thing. And if you did find that, you would put everything into it.
The
You want
clinginess, I
to
definitely say. The reaching out, I was a little iffy on, but you make a very good point about that. So anyway, just to finish off 23, Sato and her uncle show up at the hospital, go to her room. She's missing.
Yeah.
And what did they find that? Oh, the quote from.
No.
They didn't find that yet.
It was the train station.
Oh, the train station schedule, right?
And Sato remembers from the quote
the story of the one guy who went home to kill himself.
Who went to his hometown before he committed suicide, and then he's putting two and two together.
And with Sato racing off to catch Misaki before she can kill herself.
And she says goodbye.
And then 24 starts with no OP, which was a nice touch because I never really liked the OP. So it was nice that they just started with the credits and a little quiet music, and Sato kind of walking through the town, and then he gets in a cab. Was the cab next?
The cab, yes, he's in the cab.
And there's an interesting.
Actually, no, that's at the end of 23.
Oh, it's in 23 is the cab. Okay, I didn't.
He's in the cab, and wait.
That's right. 24 is when he arrives at the jetty. End of 23, he's in this cab on the way there, and the cab driver is basically saying, you know, are you sure you want to go there? The tourist season is pretty much over, and he says, yeah, I'm sure I want to go, and I'm meeting with someone. That's what he says. And the cab driver says, well, okay, I guess, you know, now that they finished construction, it's safe.
Right.
And you don't.
He doesn't say it's safe. He says now that I guess you can go. Now that they finished construction, he just
now it's okay. Yeah.
Right. I love that when they open up episode 24, they are quoting Yamazaki saying, "A dramatic death doesn't suit you." Like,
was that 24? Was that the opening?
Yeah, it's in the opening. Okay. Yeah, when it's opening and Sato
they come back to it.
Here, and he's starting to kind of talk about, you know, maybe he should jump off the cliff instead of Misaki. And then Yamazaki's like, no, Sato, a dramatic death doesn't suit you.
Because they came back to that later in the episode. I forgot that they used it at the beginning, too.
Yeah, I think it was at the beginning.
When they used it at the beginning, when he runs with the cell phone, you hear that line again.
Yeah.
But so he arrives at the jetty, and they show this little guard railing around the edge of the jetty, and that's what I thought the construction was. And I'm thinking, okay, how is that going to stop anybody? Because it's like waist high. And so he goes there, and he starts talking to himself about how he, you know, did I miss her or am I early? And then she reveals that she's basically sitting in the shadows watching him, and she starts talking about how she basically thinks she's cursed.
Yes, yeah. Actually, no, you're right. It was towards
when he runs with the cell phone. Yeah.
I just looked at my notes. My notes were flipped around. So yeah, he's actually, so in the beginning he's trying to encourage Misaki to come home. He's like telling her, you know what, like you're there's lots of good things in the world, you know, and I you know, you can come home and you can experience them, and this isn't what you really want to do.
And she's basically talking about how she brings nothing but pain to everybody's life who she touches.
And she said, you know, you're the one person who needed me, and now she said, no, but I'm so useless. And you know, he's trying to save her, you know. And so she decides that she's going to jump. She finally says, no, I'm doing it. You know, I appreciate that you're here, and I appreciate that you came, but I've made the decision and I'm done.
She had a great line about how suicide notes are important because they let people know it was a suicide, not an accident.
Yeah. And so she decides to jump and Sato saves her.
Mm-hmm.
He actually
he also has this big speech about how life sucks, but it's still worth it.
Yeah.
And she jumps and basically she jumps over the edge and she suddenly stops. And the camera pans up and you see Sato holding onto her legs.
Yeah.
So reminded me of Tokyo Godfathers. In fact, what year was this show? Do you know?
2005 or 6.
So it was just after Tokyo Godfathers, so they probably did take that from there.
Let me see. I'll tell you right now. Hang on, sorry. Okay. you might be able to pull it up faster than me.
Mm-hmm.
It came out 2006.
Okay, so Tokyo Godfathers was 2004, if I recall correctly. So they very well may have borrowed it, because when the mother in Tokyo Godfathers jumps with the kid,
right,
and then Hana goes after her, and there's this big long chain of the three of them holding onto each other. Mm-hmm. So reminded me of that, because Sato literally just leans over and grabs her by the legs and saves her.
So Sato saves her, and he tells Misaki, "You didn't do anything wrong." Because Misaki, and this is very, very common for people that were in abuse situations. They feel like they're the ones that are the reason. They, as the victim, they actually blame themselves instead of blaming the perpetrators. They actually turn around and say, "Well, this was my fault. I caused this. I was the reason this person beat me or did whatever, or said whatever to me because." I deserve it, and I caused the suffering and I'm the one who brought the pain. And so Sato uses a very effective sentence to kind of tell Misaki, hey, like, it wasn't your fault, like, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, it wasn't you, and she probably hasn't had anyone tell her that. Yeah. And she's probably never had anyone kind of give her that kind of empathy and compassion. And even though her uncle is taking care of her, he doesn't really know how to to reach her, and it's not his fault. It's he's never been in a situation where he's had to,
And I think that's why they paired well, because even though it's very different reasons, they're both people who are mentally ill get people who are mentally ill. You understand it on a level that someone who doesn't have the illness doesn't. Or doesn't have any other illness, doesn't can't get it, which I think is why those two worked together. Yeah. And also why Yamazaki and Sato always butted heads, because as neurotic as he is, Yamazaki is basically healthy.
Yeah. Comparison,
he's an asshole.
Yamazaki was ready to essentially face his music, And
Yamazaki's kind of in it.
Was venturing out on his own, and him living in Tokyo was of his own doing. It wasn't by some sort of gift that somebody gave him, or he wasn't in hikikomori,
Well, and he's kind of an asshole, but he wasn't mentally ill.
Right.
Which is why he and Sato never really connected. It's why Sato and Hitomi connected too much.
To the negative.
Yeah, because if they related to that mental illness. Right. It's why Sato and Misaki make a good pair, because they get each other. And then so he's telling her, you're not worthless, it's not your fault, yada yada. And then
he turns around and tells her that it's actually the fault of the conspiracy theory. The NHK.
He goes right back to his conspiracy theories. And at first I wasn't sure if it was him legitimately having another meltdown, or if he was just saying it for her benefit, to just kind of rally her.
Right. Yeah, he I don't know. This is the same thing that happened when he was on the cliff in the Suicide Club.
Yeah.
Where at once, it's kind of like once he was at that point of like no return, essentially, where his delusional side takes over.
Well, I think
he just
He
accepts
started
it.
it for her benefit. He was basically
Right.
saying, blame God if you need to blame somebody. And
Right.
he initially was trying to help her and trying to rally her, but because he's delusional, once you start down that path, it's going to keep going.
Stop.
So he pulls out, he envisions this monster coming out of the sea, that's trying to get them. He pulls out his phone and says, "This is the only thing that can stop it." And you see the phone turn into a bomb. And he rushes toward the edge of the jetty with his phone in his hand to in his head, sacrifice himself to kill this deep monster to save Masaki. And suddenly he realizes he's killing himself to save the woman he's in love with. What is he doing?
I know. So actually, I thought that you would mention this, but one of my favorite parts about this is the original ending comes back.
Oh, I didn't catch it.
Really?
What? I didn't even. I think I was just kind of. Now that you mention it, I remember, but I didn't. It didn't connect at the time because I was just kind of trying to figure out what he was doing. I was too distracted by, was he really losing it to catch? But yeah, the original closing music comes back.
Mm-hmm. The original closing music comes back, and I was like, oh, John would love that.
Yeah. And then he runs, and she tries to run after him, and he has that realization he's in love with her. And
right.
I've got to say, this is probably.
Yamazaki says that a dramatic death.
Yeah, this is dramatic death doesn't suit you, and then he realizes he's in love with Masaki. Yeah, and this is a rare case of a good romantic subplot. I normally hate romantic subplots, but this one worked well.
Yeah.
And she's running after. She tries to catch him. She trips in the snow. He goes over the edge. And then we find out what the construction was that the cab driver had mentioned at the end of the previous episode.
And Sato says, "Damn you, construction! Let me have my dramatic death."
It's this bit of chain link fence about 8 by 8 that they put under the cliff to catch anybody who might jump. This episode actually really makes up for a lot because I loved this episode. And I didn't love the series as a whole.
I love what Misaki says, that you can't die, Sato. I was half expecting her to say, "You can't die, you're more worthless than I am," but she leaves it at that. She just says, "You can't die, Sato, you can't die."
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of shows like a change in her as well. Yeah. Because instead of her thinking that she's worthless, she just focuses on him in this moment. She's really focusing on him. She's really wanting to save him. It's not about saving herself anymore.
Well, you can see her take that. You can see her take that turn when she runs after him.
Yeah.
You can almost see that wheel. I don't remember if she had a line, but you can kind of see that wheel turning where it's not about her anymore. For her.
Yeah.
So he gets saved by this bit of chain link fence, and then they say, if they try to walk back, they'll freeze to death in there. There are no the train station is a day's walk or whatever. And she mentions that the house she grew up in is abandoned and close by, so they spend the night in her old house, just kind of getting to know each other, which I thought was very sweet.
It reminded me of him being in the abandoned house when he was in the MMORPG with the cat girl, and how he wanted to kind of gain some sort of like get to know you scenario, not like necessarily sexually, but more like an emotional connection that he wanted to develop with Nia the cat girl.
Right.
And now he's developing a real life emotional connection
with
Misaki, which I thought was really, really sweet. And I love that she's like, "Oh, tell me about, your dreams and stuff." And he's like, "Oh," and he starts to tell her about his crazy Freudian dream, and she's like,
nice flashback to that episode, like a mid-series episode where they're talking about Freud. They just kind of called back to it.
And it was really cute. And then he actually starts to tell her really about his childhood and how he used to play ball with his dad, which really upset me in some ways because he should have realized that his father's in the hospital. But maybe he will, I don't know. like
he has to.
in the universe of
Oh,
this.
yeah, yeah, in the long run. But
Yeah.
they can't have him behave. Yes, I agree, it's fucked up and wrong, but that's who he is at this point.
Right. And that's okay. At least he's thinking about something other than he's ruthless and pathetic, and and he's actually having a real conversation and a really like emotional connection that he's developing with Misaki.
And next morning, or actually flash forward to unspecified time in the future, he gets a letter from, actually gets 2 letters from Yamazaki and Hitomi. Yamazaki's now engaged. His parents had, tried to set him up with all these different girls. He finally agreed to meet one to shut them up, and they clicked. So now they're engaged. And Hitomi had the kid. Now she's, now this.
And she says like, I have everything now. Or something
yes,
like
that.
And I almost felt like she was being like condescending or sarcastic about it, even.
Well, she's trying. I took it as she's trying to convince herself that now she's okay.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. But I was
kind of what she's always done, is trying to convince herself that she's okay.
And I was kind of just being like, Sato, don't even worry about it.
And they don't hint that there will be anything more between them other than, the occasional letter.
Right. And I love that Sato's waking up and, like it's at first it seems like it's going to be like another, like him going into his delusional state. But it was actually kind of cute because, he's like, and he's like, no, I don't want to go to work. And everyone has that feeling, and so I love how they kind of resolve everything, and now Sato's tutoring Misaki because Misaki's trying to get into college,
effectively get her GED,
get back her school,
or whatever the Japanese version is,
right? And
then she comes up with well, they finally reveal the captive thing from the end of 22. She has this effectively what a hostage exchange agreement between the 2 of them, where if one of them decides to kill themselves, the other is going with them.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if you've ever heard of the game of chicken, but
of course.
Okay, well, and she relates it to an arms race that arms race,
mutually assured destruction.
Countries are going to go after nuclear warfare. Well, they're both going to blow each other up, or they're going to help each other and not blow each other up. So that's pretty much what she says. That's because he asked, like, what is her NHK? What is her, organization? And she says it's the Japanese Hostage Exchange Association, which I
thought that was adorable, especially how sinister they kind of set it up at the end of 22.
Exactly. And now I like what he says is basically like, our problems aren't solved. We're not better, quote unquote. We're not cured or anything. Like we are. And he said, all we can do is cope with what we can just do the best that we can with what we have, and be there for each other. And pretty much that's the moral of life.
As I put it in my
Go ahead.
As I put it in my notes, it's a provisionally happy ending.
Yeah, no, it's totally. I mean, you think about it, like it is the most realistic happy ending because there's no magical cure that's going to change things. Like shit's gonna happen to you, good things and bad things. Like, and we all have to just kind of cope with what happens to us, and we develop a support system with either somebody that we really can talk to or a group of people that we can talk to, whatever, to help us to deal with situations and scenarios. And, like just because he's going to work doesn't mean that his delusions are gone, It just means that now he understands he has responsibilities, and and he also is kind of accepting of his situation and of stuff. And that's what I kind of really liked about this anime is like, he realizes that he's not going to be your average bear, and he's good with that. Like, he's totally okay with that. Like, he understands that he just has to keep trying every day to do his best. And I really like that. I thought that this is why, for me, this is one of my top 5 anime of all time.
This last episode bought it a lot. But all through it, I'm all throughout, talking about this one. You've periodically asked, what do you think of it? And I couldn't put my finger on it. On paper, I should adore this show. It should be an easy top 5 because brilliant concept, really interesting. I love all the psychological stuff and kind of the mind fuck of it all, and where the story goes. As I've mentioned, reminds me a lot of Paranoia Agent, which is in my top 5.
Yeah.
But there was just something that didn't click for me, and I realized I don't like any of the characters.
Really?
I kind of fell for Misaki a little bit towards the end, which is probably why I like the ending more than anything else. But I wasn't rooting for anybody. At any point, they could have killed any of them, and I maybe would have wondered where the story was going to go, but I wouldn't have gotten emotionally involved.
Oh, holy shit! That's an interesting.
And for me, I need the tie. There was nothing to connect me to it. There was nothing tying me into it. Even though I was interested, and it's extremely well done. It's just for me, it didn't have that connection. So
it didn't feel like it wasn't for you. Like maybe let's think of I'm thinking anime wise. Let's and I'm trying to remember all the lists now of anime that we've gone through, but comparing, I'm trying to think
of okay, and I think I liked this more than Part-Timer, but at least there were a couple of characters in Part-Timer that I connected to. I kind of had a little crush on Chiho. I really liked Alcial. There was nobody like that in this except for Misaki a little bit at the end. I kind of liked Yamazaki at the beginning, but he got on my nerves after about 3 or 4 episodes. I never connected to Sato.
Really?
No.
Wow, I'm really surprised.
I never liked Hitomi for some similar reasons that you've expounded upon this time.
No, well, for me, Hitomi was very realistic. Like,
he's
a very, very realistic character, and maybe I think possibly it might be that you don't like the characters because they might be too realistic in some senses.
No, because I like it when things hit home, even if they hit too close. And it has hit too close at points, particularly with Misaki. I think that's when I started to fall for Misaki, was not just because of the Mamimi thing, which you're right about, but also because I really related and it hit some nerves for me. So that wouldn't have put me off. It's just up until the end, I didn't care if any of them lived or died.
Wow.
So that's gonna, and I don't need that in a series because I don't really have that in Lane. But Lane, I don't really care about any of the characters in Lane.
Well, yeah, Lane for me, I didn't really, I wasn't emotionally attached.
Yeah, I never got emotionally attached. I love Lane; it's my second favorite after Fully Cooley, but that's just because it's such an amazing mindfuck.
Wow, I'm really surprised. Because for me, I really, really got close to Sato. Like I felt emotionally very vested in his future, and I really wanted to I wanted him to have an ending that he deserved. I mean, I felt like the whole time he kept trying to fight himself to get a happy ending or some sort of happy ending, and try to understand how to get the happy ending. So that's why I kind of was rooting for him.
And I think that's the hook in this is, I've said this. You didn't see Watamote, did you? You've never seen that one?
Not fully, no. I watched it all the way from the end.
When I did an anime review show on YouTube a couple of years ago, Channel Anime. Did 11 episodes until I realized I was very uncomfortable talking to a camera. As opposed to, in this situation, yeah, I'm talking to a camera, but I'm talking to you. If there's nobody behind the camera, I get very uncomfortable. But what I said in that review was, if you're not rooting for the main character, who is very unlikable at times, but you have to be rooting for her or the show doesn't work. I think with NHK, you have to be rooting for Sato or the show doesn't work.
Well, actually, okay. Do you have anything else to add? Because I wanted to kind of jump to
just beyond that. Having said all that, it's extremely well made. I can't fault, aside from that little issue with the mirror between Sato and Yuichi's cure. I have no beyond that. I have no objective criticisms of it. It is damn near perfectly made. I just didn't connect. emotionally.
Well, I think it for some people, like I would say, at least to me, the overall story is very emotionally connecting and very emotionally developing. And I think maybe as a whole, you might have felt more that you connected to the story itself rather than the characters.
I've related to a lot of it. Like you said, it brings out all your issues. It made me, on these calls and admit to things I didn't think I would. But it still didn't pull me in. I was never really invested.
I see.
I never got invested.
You think that maybe if you weren't watching it for the calls, that maybe you could have taken it or leaving it.
Yeah, I don't. If I wasn't watching it for this, I don't know that I would have gotten past 3 or 4 episodes.
Interesting. Huh.
Which I'm glad I did because that ending was so good.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a lot of, and I actually have to say this. My favorite author is David Mitchell, who wrote Cloud Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Loved all of his books, but in a lot of cases, they were good until they were great. The ending bought it a lot.
Right, I see what you mean.
And this is definitely one of those cases where it was okay, it was good, and that ending bought it a lot.
For me, an ending like what's his name? Arcata says that
the ending is paramount.
And I am a sole believer in that. Like if I don't have a good ending to my show, I am screaming at my TV. Like as you can see with my whole rant on Dance.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that show. I hate that show because I really loved it. Like I loved it, and it was dark, and it was intense, and it was emotional, and it was incredible, and it was going through things that I thought were really, really special for an anime. And then you fuck that ending. Like you just literally, all you did was blow up a bomb and destroy everything. That's how I felt about it. Like, and I can compare that to, for instance, like Zenkyo no Terror. Zenkyo no Terror is the one I told you about. About kids. I want to watch that actually. It's really good. But anyway, when I watch the show, the middle gets a little messy for the sake of the plot to move, but the ending, I have not cried so hard for a show like that. Like Code Geass made me cry like that. I mean really like deeply cry. Psychopaths made me like deeply.
Really?
Yeah, I broke down, particularly when the detective,
the older one, that he was my favorite character, so I wasn't happy about that.
He was my favorite character, and that just kind of killed me, that one was, but Zenkyo no Terror as a whole, that was incredible anime. Steins Gate, talk about speaking of, okay, so kind of shifting gears here, all right. We need to figure out what our next anime is.
Well, just before we get to that, I'm a little further into Death Note.
Okay.
I'm up to episode 5 now. Really loving it so far. I love how complex the killings are getting.
Yes.
Like how he had the head of the police send out this letter to all of that would end up killing everybody. Yeah. He basically killed all of the FBI agents that were involved with one fell swoop. Love that. I have some suspicions about L. It seems odd that his computer is on the floor in an empty room that looks padded.
I don't want to go too far into it because
you don't want to spoil anything.
And
I'm right at the point where they're gonna meet Elle in person.
Yes.
So, and I have a feeling this is gonna be a reveal. Also, I caught an interesting little just information drop from one of the other gods who said something very quickly about Riku. I can never remember the god of death. I can never remember his name. Yeah. Yes, having 2 notebooks. So I can't wait to see how that's going to play in. But 5 episodes, I'm loving it. I'm hooked.
So I added that because I thought about it, and it's definitely amongst for like particularly like anime beginners, you know,
Yeah.
like they everyone says like this is one of the quintessential anime that you have to watch, and I would love to see the reaction in our community of this anime. So I added it because
particularly because this one will be interesting because of the moral ambiguity. We haven't really done that yet.
We haven't really done one with serious moral ambiguity, and we haven't done one that has a really deep dark, like very 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 dark.
You're basically at this point, and I don't know if this changes, but you're following the bad guy.
Yeah. And
but I have a feeling L is not going to turn out to be as good as we think. So
I like the idea that we would have a character that's more of an anti-hero, and we haven't had that in our watching or viewing.
Yeah, analysis. Part timer a little bit, but Mao was actually pretty good.
Right, Mao was never
never really evil.
Never was really dark or anything. So so that said, I busted out with these. I think it was 5 anime that I think are really good anime to kind of give us an idea of where we want to go next. I think I put Ghost in the Shell standalone complex there. Because
we want to do that before we do the movie.
Well, yeah. Well, we can do standalone complex and then do the movie after, or not do it at all. Because standalone complex is kind of
standalone.
Exactly. So we could do that. Then we have Elfen Lied, which is an incredibly twisted.
I've only seen the first couple, but I liked them. I never quite got back to it though.
It is an incredibly twisted, dark, heartbreaking anime to me. It's very, very interesting kind of to see how that story develops and what our kind of take on that would be. That's Elfen Lied. Then I had I put Death Note on there because Death Note I think would be a very interesting shift to go to, especially since we're going into October. Would be really interesting to see what people's kind of perception of that is, and it would be so fitting for like October and Halloween and everything. So Death Note. And then, because I was thinking to do something more along the lines of very dark and almost horror, because Death Note is that Ghost in the Shell has that to some extent. Not really the horror, but dark and very like the more mature storyline. And Elfen Lied definitely has
that's very horror,
dark.
And what about Paranoia Agent?
Huh?
Because I've been mentioning Paranoia Agent. For a while. That's on the list, too. That is on the list. Okay.
Yes. So I have Paranoia Agent. I have Elfen Lied. I have Death Note, Ghost in the Shell, and what was the other one?
Paranoia Agent, Death Note, Ghost in the Shell, Elfen Lied, and let me look.
I know I had 5 of them that I put out. There's Ghost in the Shell, Paranoia, Elfen Lied, Death Note, and the 5th one I can't remember now.
I don't see the poll.
You don't see the poll?
Let me see.
That would be a problem. There should be.
Don't see it.
I
see Last Hangout. My trailer for Gourmet Girl Graffiti. The list of what we've covered so far.
Hey, Dave.
This Hangout, the link to the dub that Dave posted, and then Watamote. I don't see a poll.
That's weird.
In the community, right?
Yeah, I posted in the community an hour, a few hours ago now, but
not seeing it. Looking at your page, your stream, and not seeing it either. Just in case, just checking to make sure you didn't post it to the wrong thing.
That would be.
Oh wait! I see it shared privately. It looks like you shared it with everybody in the group, but didn't post it to the group.
Oh.
I went to your page and
it's. I don't know why that. Sometimes it's doing that now. I realize that now.
Okay. Well, at least we know it's there and.
Share it then. That's fine. But yeah.
Right.
Dave says John's bitch face comment had me in stitches. I'm happy that you were able to join, Dave. I think we're
Okay.
finishing up here in a little
Yeah.
bit, but so basically that poll is there, or I'll reshare the poll. I don't know what the hell happened there. And we need to kind of decide this week what our next anime will be to cover, so we can start jumping on that. And like I said, I think we'll do 4. I think 4 episodes is a good number to kind of do to cover.
And I'll hit my anime list and just grab all the pages for each one and post links to them so people can get.
Oh, awesome! Thank you. Yeah, that way people can kind of take a look at what it's about. I think Death Note is a really interesting one, particularly because I don't even want to go into it.
Okay, yeah, we'll wait until
Yeah. Oh, Dave says that he's in for Death Note. Dave, check out the community. I'm gonna resend this ballot that's basically gonna have all 5 of the anime that we will kind of vote on. And
just to finish up, Paranoia Agent is on there because it has a lot of very similar psychological themes to NHK.
Yes. It's definitely got the anti-hero thing going on as well. So I think Paranoia Agent will be a great addition to our group because, like as you mentioned, it's a great follow-up to Welcome to NHK, but also Paranoia Agent is a very more mature anime. I would say there's a lot of dark themes and deeply psychological themes, if you will, that are in Paranoia Agent.
And it's Satoshi Kon who makes the best anime ever.
Yes. Yeah.
Forget Miyazaki. It's Kon.
Yeah. So, have you been watching anything else lately? You added Death Note
since the last time. Just been trying to push through Death Note and finish up NHK. I'm probably, since, like, as I mentioned, maybe before we went live, I don't have any more shows this week. My podcast is off for the week because my co-host is vacationing in Northern California, so I'm off for a while. I think it's been about 8 months. I'm gonna do Fooly Cooly again.
Oh, nice.
It's been a while, so it's time.
Find other things to add to Fooly Cooly, always feel free to post it in the community. I did Tokyo Ghoul.
Is Tokyo Ghoul the one? It's kind of the demon who meets the girl on this side. In this reality, half of it's kind of black and white.
No.
There was another anime, Tokyo something, that came out a few years ago that I'm thinking of. I'll look it up.
It is about a boy who meets a girl who goes on a date with a girl who ends up being a demon, or not a demon, she's a ghoul.
Okay. It sounds similar to the one I'm thinking of, but a little bit different.
It's pretty interesting because, actually it might be similar because...
Demon Lad, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Huh?
I think it was Demon Lad was the one I was thinking of.
Blood Lad?
Blood Lad, that's it.
Yeah, Blood Lad's awesome.
That's the one I was thinking of. Okay.
It's hilarious, actually. It's really, really good. So when you're... For my issue is with Tokyo Ghoul is the first season is incredible. It is an anime that, for me, I've been wanting that kind of anime to come to fruition. Very dark, very interesting, has the 2 different societies. You've got the human society, and you have the ghoul society. It's very... It reminds me of Shiki in some parts, and the idea of what is human, what does it mean to be human, and do you blame ghouls for having to eat because that's the only thing they can eat, type of thing. And the darkness of it gets dark really, really fast. I really enjoy the characters. I think there's great character development that they have going on. Then I got into season 2, and I fucking hated it. I hated it so much that I wanted to stab my fucking TV.
Wow.
I'm not even kidding you. talk about dramatic for the sake of fucking drama. Like I hate. I don't watch soap operas. I really hate soap operas. Like parts of Game of Thrones annoy the shit out of me because they get so dramatic for the sake of drama, and I can't deal with that. Like I don't like,
melodrama.
I don't like melodrama. I don't like when you're going to go into a fight and the fight is taking like 20 minutes and you're playing like really cacophonous piano at the same time. And that shit happened the whole fucking second season. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like I was screaming.
So is it one of those deals like in a lot of shonen season, animes do, where like the entire episode is one battle, and then the next episode is the next battle? Is it one of those
some of it does that, but then it really lays on the drama extra thick. Like I feel like I'm suffocating in bullshit. Like I literally feel like I'm like up to here in fucking like ruffly feathered garbage.
Okay, so like real soap opera stuff. Gotcha.
Yeah, like then you're like pissing characters off and pissing the other character off, and like there's all this like absolute melodrama, and I don't get it. Like, why is one faction of their society against the other one when they should all be united against the humans? Or why is this one faction against the humans if they're trying to kind of get the humans to like them? Like, it doesn't fucking make sense. Like, where's the fucking logic? I'm actually like going crazy over this because I'm like, like the logic isn't there. Like
that sounds like something you should maybe drop.
Well, I watched it.
You finished it.
It's like a bad train wreck. I had to watch it to the end and torture myself,
Okay.
like stab myself in the brain to watch it to the end, to just be like, I can't believe I wasted, 4 or 6 hours on this shit? I can't believe it. Like, and then I've heard that there's going to be a season 3. And I really fucking hope that somebody first turns around and remakes season 2. Because the first season is amazing. Like, the character development is great. You get this real struggle, for the main character, for Kaneki, because Kaneki is like, I'm now a ghoul, but I'm half human, and I don't want to eat people, but I can't eat human food at all because it physically makes me ill, and I could die from eating too much human food. Like, this is a problem, And on top of that, he has his best friend, and he doesn't want his best friend to get, eaten, and he doesn't want to eat his best friend, and, so there's this, and then there's a society within their ghoul society. There's an organization that, is trying to help other ghouls that are, like, have that, empathy.
It's kind of the reluctant vampire.
Huh?
It's kind of the reluctant vampire.
Right, exactly. But it's really well done. Like, I actually was really liking it because I love Shiki. Shiki is probably another anime that made me bawl like a child, because it has such dark, really dark, really, like, fucked up shit happens in this story where you're just like, whoa, and then you kind of feel like, was the character, justified in killing this person this way, in torturing this character? I don't even know what that means. But, were they justified in it, or did that character take it too far, or did that character actually break? Did they have a just huge breakdown where this shit just went off the rails, And that was something that I really loved about Shiki. And the first episode of Tokyo Ghoul was giving me that kind of, like, struggle where there's, like, there's characters that don't want to do this, and they're doing it. And then, there's clearly more to the story. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be a situation where I need to read the manga. And I hate that. I really hate that, because for me, if you're going to do the anime, you fucking do it right. Or you don't do it at all. So That's my whole thing, is that if you're not gonna follow the story, or if you're going to develop like an alternative ending to the story, you at least make it fucking logical. Like, at least make it make sense. I mean, you can't have an organization that hates humans and then they're gonna fight against like their own kind without explaining why they're fighting against each other. Like, there's no fucking explanation for that shit. You know?
Yeah.
So that pisses me off to no end. Like, that really does. It grinds my gears.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, I just want to mention I posted a side-by-side comparison of a scene from Death Note and its parody in Watamote, an anime I've raved about before.
Yes.
You got to see the side-by-side comparison. This was a case where I saw the parody in Watamote years ago when I watched Watamote. Hadn't seen Death Note, so I didn't get it. And I had never even heard of Death Note until I looked at the comments and people were raving about this parody of Death Note that they did. I saw the scene in Death Note, damn near fell out of my chair laughing because I finally got the parody from Watamote. It's that really dramatic scene in the first or second episode where he's writing, where it's really dramatic shot of him writing in the notebook.
Yeah, yes.
Watamote parodied that to the letter.
Yeah, I saw that. I definitely have to watch Watamote now. Like, as I've watched some of it, but not, like I said, I haven't watched it all the way through. So, but yeah, now I saw that parody. It looks really good. But I started watching something really bizarre and random.
Okay.
It's called Bodacious Space Pirates.
Sounds fun.
And so far I'm getting into it. It's I think I'm in the second episode of the show, and basically it's about a girl whose mother was a pirate in space, but they were legal pirates. So they had like a letter of marque, so they actually were able to be pirates, which is kind of interesting because that was the case, in history. So, and they found out her father died. So now she is going to become the pilot or the captain of this space pirate ship.
Okay, so it sounds like it's more serious than comedic.
It has moments of seriousness, and it's kind of balancing the two.
It's halfway between. Because the title reminds me a lot of Space Dandy.
Yeah,
and I was kind of getting that vibe.
I was like, Space Dandy style, I'm totally for it. So we'll see. Like I said, I just started it because after Tokyo Ghoul Square Root A and the amount of screaming and that went on in my house,
you needed something fun.
We needed to take a little break and go into something a little less dramatic, or at least it seems to be less dramatic and not as upsetting, you know. So.
And I reference this all the time because I really want to get your take on it. If you want dramatic but hilariously bad dramatic, again, I got to mention Diabolic Lovers.
I'm gonna totally watch it.
I just got to keep pushing this because I just need to get your take on it because someone else has to share the horror that is the unintentional comedy and horror that is Diabolic Lovers.
I think we have to start a list of like love to hate anime.
See, that's the only one I have. That's
the only one you have?
That's the. I think that's the only bad anime. At least the only bad anime I've watched. There have been plenty I've dropped where I just watched an episode and I'm not into it and I didn't keep going. But that's the only one I really thought was bad, and it was enjoyably so. So I haven't had the experience of hate watching, as they call it. I've never hate watched an anime.
Well, I will definitely add Tokyo Ghoul Square Root A to that, because that is there are parts of the show in the second season that are good, but I was reading the mall forum discussion and I was like, you fucking emo bitches. Like, seriously. Like, somebody went and fucking took the manga, was like, I'm gonna be super emo about this shit to the point that people want to cut themselves after watching it. And not because, like, it's so sad, but because like you just can't deal with it. Like you can't even seriously.
Mhm.
I that's how I felt about that
Okay.
shit. So on that
All right.
note, everyone go to the community, vote what your next anime is that you want to be watching. I said there's 5 of them, but I can't remember what the fifth one is right now.
Yeah.
So it will be up there shortly, the ballot.
Paranoid Agent, Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, Elfen Lied. Oh, Last Exile, another one of my favorites.
Last
And
Exile,
Death Note.
that's it.
Yes,
Now,
love
Last
Last Exile.
Exile is totally the opposite of all of those. Like,
Yeah.
complete opposite.
Mhm.
Last Exile is a very beautiful, very fantastical.
And
Is that what? I mean, that's a word.
yeah, that works. It's somewhere between sci-fi and fantasy. It's on the face of it, it's sci-fi, but they don't really explain a lot, so it's kind of fantasy.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the second season? Fam the
No,
Second.
that's actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna put that on my list for.
Really good.
I've heard
Particularly
that too.
where they go with I'm blanking on his name too. The white-haired guy.
Oh, yes. I can't remember.
You
His
know who
name.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then nobody else watching this probably has any idea what we're talking about.
They're like, whatever.
That character. He goes kind of insane in the second season.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Definitely, that's on my list.
And Klaus and Lavi only have like a short cameo. They're not in it at all.
Oh, no kidding.
2 new lead characters.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's after they've returned to Earth, and all of the ships have come back. All the exile ships have come back.
Oh, wow.
And basically a world war breaks out.
Ooh, I think I might start that tonight.
It's Last Exile Fam, the Silver Wing, was on Funimation. I don't know where else it would be now. I haven't looked for it in a while.
Okay, well, I'll check it out.
But one of the streaming sites has to have it. It was up a few years ago.
Awesome. That sounds good.
All right.
All right, well, I'll see you, and
so hopefully next Tuesday we'll have something decided.
For sure. No, we'll have something before the end of the week.
Okay. So
All right.
next Tuesday. All right. Have a good day.
Bye. Bye, Dave. Thanks for joining.